Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause. Without any waste of time, I'm taking the sending back my session to the studio, and I want to thank my interpreter here on the behalf. You guys are not taking pictures of us, but thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause. Let's give myself. Give myself a round of applause.
Yes.
Why aren't you doing it?
A round of applause for
Yeah.
our moderator, please.
So we are. I'm going. I'm going.
Are you-
I'm going. The producer is now
SDGs
chasing me
champion.
away from the stage. I wanted to play a video about ant, but I'll play it tomorrow. Yeah,
We
because
will
it
get
was
to
it
it.
was part of this thing. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you to all of our panelists and presenters from the last session for all of your energy and insights. I would like to now invite the participants for session 6 to please come up. We are, in terms of time, we need to break for lunch at 1:15. So let us see how we go, and then we will we will talk along the way. All right. I think we can keep the chairs, but if, for those of you who have PowerPoints, you can come up here when you are giving your presentation. Okay, thank you. Yeah. And our moderator is Mr. Sabino Andre.
Okay, come.
Boa tarde, estimados colegas. Eu vou falar em português, que é a língua que eu mais vou me sentir confortável. Can I? Yes, I need to translate. Hello. Sim, mais uma vez. Ok, eu vou falar em português, que é a língua que eu me sinto mais seguro. Meu nome é Sabino Fernando, técnico da Direção Nacional de Planificação e Orçamento, e vou representar a nossa diretora, Cristina, neste momento, que ela não pôde cá estar, então fui convidado para poder fazer esta parte de moderação. Vou pular essa parte da introdução, vamos direto por causa do tempo em si, que temos 1 hora do tempo para podermos fazer estas nossas apresentações e para podermos irmos ao almoço. Desde já eu gostava de convidar cá o primeiro interveniente desta sessão 6 para poder fazer a apresentação, o senhor Amson Sibanda. Por favor.
I'm highly dependent on PowerPoint presentations. I don't know if I can function without one. It's like coffee to some of us. Any luck? But basically, what we are trying to do with this session, some of us had the wonderful opportunity to go through most of the voluntary local reviews that were prepared by local authorities in Zimbabwe as well as in South Africa. And of course, for Mozambique, they are still working on theirs. So we will not be able to sink our teeth into those reviews and give you some initial feedback how we think your reports. I don't want to say it's a critical assessment. I don't think we are not here to really criticize reports, but it's a question of can we draw some important lessons from the review of all the reports that you have prepared, and this was very useful as you proceed to maybe preparing your next voluntary local review, or if you're Mozambique, you are currently engaged in this process. So what kind of lessons can you also learn from those who have gone before you? But whilst we are waiting for that, maybe I can just go through what I have in the interest of time. So in general, I think when you look at I don't know how many reports we have for Zimbabwe, 8, South Africa, 10. So we have a lot of local reviews that have been prepared. So what we find is that, or the key highlights for me, the VLR process, the progress and opportunities in localizing the SDGs, I think it's taking root in most of these countries. And of course, we can see that definitely there are efforts to foster greater inclusivity. But we also learn when you look at these voluntary local reviews, you find that efforts to implement the Sustainable Development Goals, there's also evidence that you find at the national level that progress is off track, even in your own local authorities, in critical areas such as poverty eradication and hunger, combating inequalities, issues of access to public services, energy access, and of course there are clear cases when you look at certain voluntary local reviews that there are significant challenges when it comes to climate resilience. If you take a city like Etokini, Durban, for some of you who don't know Etokini, right, it's right there by the coast. And we all know what happened because of cyclones. The same thing with Nampula, right? You are also exposed to these serious environmental challenges. If you are an inland local authority, a district which is far away, maybe you are closer to, let's say, in Matabeleland South, your environment is dry. So what kind of challenges do you face, which impact your ability to accelerate implementation of the SDGs? So there are a lot of these specificities that we tend to pick up that definitely tell us a very, very important story, which you don't get when you only look at the National Voluntary Report, which is more or less a national average, right? It gives you the national picture. But the nuance that you want to get if you are into development, right, is what is happening to people in the Eastern Cape, what is happening to people from Manicaland province or in Beira. So this is what you learn if you are trying to really implement your policies at the national level. You get more richer analysis and the status of SDG implementation when you go local. You can go to slide 3. Of course, what we find, which is common throughout most of these local reviews, is that you all face similar challenges in terms of human and financial resource constraints. This is a universal challenge. Of course, you can also pick up that there are some fragmented efforts. And of course, when it comes to accountability mechanisms that you have in place, we can say some of them are inadequate, which is, I think, some of the concerns that we had from our engagement with groups that represent children, civil society, and other stakeholders. So overall, if you want to address some of these challenges, we have had so many of them. I think it is important for us to institutionalize transformative practices, what really works in certain localities that you can take on board, that can really make a difference in a situation. Can you prioritize high impact SDGs? We had this, I think somebody said they just prioritize only 4 SDGs. Which authority was that? Right? A small place in South Africa, they simply said, we cannot deal with all these SDGs, but we can only prioritize 4. That means so much in our local community. That is fine, because development is about addressing the needs of your local people, right? And so prioritizing is very, very important. But of course, as what was highlighted during our opening session yesterday from the resident coordinator, it is also very important that we integrate the 6 transformative transitions. I think I have a presentation in the afternoon where I will highlight what these are. It's also important to have pluralistic approaches. We can't have one approach to everything, so try to be innovative and try to look at the situation differently, and I think this is very important. The importance of strengthening capacity building is very, 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 very important. We also heard yesterday that the city of Mutare simply looked in-house and said, what kind of human resources do we have? And how can we build those capacities instead of relying on, let's say, a consultant? You already have those resources, but can you focus on those in-house resources? That will also help you to create buy-in from your local authorities. And of course, it's also very important to have these follow-up mechanisms. But above all, how do you ensure local ownership and relevance? The trust deficit that you highlighted in the last panel, that can be addressed if you really ensure local ownership. And yesterday, we also heard that in Johannesburg, by the time you produce a voluntary local report, you take it to the people, they say, but it's no longer relevant. These things have moved, right? So I think that is key to your local ownership. And then you can go to the next slide. We heard this morning, it's very important, I think, in your reports to highlight the whole of government approach. Is it really happening? Are you involving everyone who is relevant within your local authority, all the departments? I think this is very, very important if you want to avoid the silo mentality in the way you implement some programs. Somebody was standing here yesterday and said, you need to have access to energy. People who work on electricity come and they just put their pole, and right? But you want to connect that to other things. So I think you need to have to move beyond the asylum mentality when you implement some of these things. Of course, more importantly, you need institutional leadership. Is your mayor on board? Is your council on board? I like what, of course, I still call it Pretoria, what you guys did in South Africa, where you, as a city council, you came up with a declaration to say, we want to do a voluntary local review. And once you take that step, which means you're going to allocate resources to that. So this is something that I think we can all promote. And of course, we also had that there can be short-term political challenges that come up. If you change your governments at the local level, I don't know how many times in a span of 1 year, it's very, very difficult to have continuity, right? It's not only one place where this happens. Wherever you have elections, these things happen. I think I was telling the mayor, my colleague from Bulawayo, that when we had a conference, it's called the International Mayors Forum. We had it about 2-3 years in Senegal, where I met the mayor of Bulawayo. And he was so much keen. He was tweeting, he was very live, promoting SDG localization in Bulawayo. And then I was asking him what happened to him, right? There was political change. So here he had a very strong advocate of SDG localization in his city, but it's good for me to see that the city of Bulawayo is still doing the same. That passion is still there at the city level, despite the changes in government. So this is very important. And the second issue is, how do we ensure a whole of society approach, which is what Judith has been raising a few minutes ago. So this is very, very important. Most of the local reports that we looked at do not really tell a story how you really address the whole of government approach and the whole of society approach. So we hope your second voluntary local reviews will also showcase some of these elements. Third, the next slide. We also had the issue of tokenism. What you are doing when you prepare these local reports, is it real or it's symbolic localization efforts? So pay close attention to this. This is very, very important. And of course, the issue of capacity and resource constraints, I think it comes through most of the local reports that we have gone through. Local governments or the stakeholders they work with, they are always constantly dealing or grappling with challenges of human resources or financial resources. This undermines your ability to plan, to implement, to monitor, and to scale up any activities that are really impactful, right? So how do we figure out, if we want to address some of these issues? Next slide. This is the last slide. So of course, then the next issue is complexity and fragmentation. How do local governments prioritize? How do you coordinate? Given that most of these SDGs, we say they are interconnected and they are indivisible in nature. So at the local level, do you really understand what this means? And can you really highlight in your local reports how SDGs are indivisible and how they are interconnected? This is a very important lesson you can also take on board. And then, of course, there are inadequate follow-up mechanisms, including monitoring and evaluation. You can continue doing the same thing, but is it working? You can only do it right if you really make monitoring and evaluation a part of your voluntary local review processes. So this is another important message that you should also take on board. And of course, lastly, there are divergent priorities. How do you really navigate trade-offs between the global agenda, the African Union Agenda 2063? In the SADC region, we also have the SADC frameworks that you have to deal with. And of course, you have your local realities. I always like to use the example of South Africa. They have the just energy transition debate, right? You want to close coal mines in a certain area. What about the jobs, the livelihoods in that community? Yes, you can provide clean energy. You can have the solar farms. Where are those solar farms? They are not going to be in that community. They'll be somewhere else. So if you are from a certain province where you are relying on a certain source of income or industry, and you want to really reconcile the trade-offs between the SDGs or among the SDGs, you need to think about jobs, livelihoods, vis-a-vis maybe addressing issues of climate change. So your local reports, yes, in some cases we pick this up, but you can also really indicate this case. So if you are from a province where you rely on dirty energy, for instance, can you really make the case for livelihoods and jobs that can then be picked up by the people who work on the voluntary national reports, as well as your policymakers? Thank you.
Muito obrigado, colega Emerson, pela forma mais sucinta da apresentação. De seguida, vou convidar a senhora Lusungu para fazer esta apresentação, de referir que temos 7 minutos para fazer esta apresentação. Muito obrigado.
Thank you. I think lunch is near. I will be fast. I don't know if my presentation has been received or if I can share just from my end. Can I share? I can share. This is me, right? But I think you see it on your screen, so it's okay. Again, my name is Lusungu Kayani. I'm from UNECA. I think you've heard the name UNECA mentioned. We're the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. And I realize that many of you might not be familiar with the mandate of ECA and our specific role. So I just wanted to ensure we're all on the same page because it connects to my presentation, which I've not really critically assessing. I think Emson did a fabulous job, but in the interest of time, I thought I would talk more from a regional perspective. So ECA was established in 1958 by ECOSOC, the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations, and it's one of 5 regional economic commissions. We have one in Latin America and the Caribbean, in Europe, in the Arab states, and then, of course, in Africa. So we pride ourselves on our commitment to helping governments and stakeholders meet the SDGs and make them a reality. The Commission has 3 main roles. These are convening, serving as a think tank, and having an operational role. We convene stakeholders, regional governments, and multi-stakeholders into platforms that are owned by member states. And we have 54 member states that are part of the Commission, representing the countries in the region. And then we also have our think tank role. This is focusing on our research and analysis, providing this evidence-based research to member states on topics and areas that are important to them for their policy making. And we promote peer learning, innovative thinking, and our operational focus is more at the country level, and that's through our direct support to countries. And this is based on a country demand support. We have 9 substantive divisions, as you can see here, and the work on localization falls under the Poverty, Inequality, and Social Policy division, where I sit. As mentioned yesterday, you heard that there's some pilot voluntary local reviews, and ECA is proud that we sponsored and supported these first 5 in the region, including 2 in Zimbabwe. We have Victoria Falls and Harare. We also sponsored the VLR in Accra, in Ghana, in Yaoundé in Cameroon, and in Gora district in Uganda. These experiences were so popular and led to some impactful change that our member states made a request to the ECA to provide some guidelines. And I think many of you have seen me presenting the guidelines online for Mozambique. I was with Zimbabwe and Kadoma 2 years ago. And so in South Africa, I'm just meeting you today, but I think you've probably heard about the guidelines through our colleagues with UN Habitat, because those were published also in collaboration with UN Habitat and the United Cities Local Government Association for Africa. So we got that mandate from our member states, and it was great to see that this guideline was used for some of your reviews, particularly in Zimbabwe. I think Bulawayo had the chart that I'll show. And I hope that the guidelines have been useful and have made the process more feasible. So just to discuss the VLR momentum in the region, so that was 2020 with the first 5 pilot VLRs. And as we see here in Zimbabwe, the momentum has been outstanding with the amount of data collected in the areas of focus prioritized, integration into planning. We're thinking as ECA, as a regional commission, and this here just represents a graphic of how pervasive the VLRs are in the region. And this is a map from last year, so we already have more to add onto the map. But at ECA, we're thinking of how to take our support and our capacity building together with our UN family to the next level. And so I'm sort of thinking about these areas that are circled, and you'll recognize this diagram from the guidelines and from the presentation yesterday. So we provided support really in the process, but now we're thinking about the peer learning, what that can look like to continue building capacity, particularly in phase 3 to phase 5, which is the post-VLR phase, the integration and monitoring, as Amson was talking about, and the continued stakeholder engagement, because once the review is done, that's not the end, but how are stakeholders being engaged in the follow-up and in the analysis and monitoring of the VLRs. So with that, I would like to discuss something that the Commission has been working on, which is our Africa Urbanization Portal. And we launched this just a few months ago at the World Urban Forum. And on this portal, we have several areas of focus, including a dedicated tab on national urban plans and national development planning and how the two are connected. We also have a tab on SDGs, looking at SDGs in urban Africa. We hope to integrate the SDGs that are coming from all the reviews from the region, these countries and others. And we'll use big data and machine learning to try and understand and analyze, which SDGs are being prioritized and why. So just to investigate a bit further, supporting our think tank, our analysis and research role into better understanding what's happening, what are the reviews gathering, and then what is this translating into in terms of action. So this follow-up and monitoring is really important, and feeding this back into this platform will be beneficial for regional analysis and comparison. I'm not sure if this will work. 2 minutes. Just wanted to click on this link, see if I don't think it's gonna work, so maybe I'll skip that and do a demo another time. But also in this platform, we also have the voluntary local reviews that we're uploading from the region. And so the plan is to build this page out in the coming months. We're dedicating some resources towards that so that we can search every document that's uploaded, it can be searchable. So that's benefiting us, it's benefiting you. You can look for stakeholder engagement planning. And then you can then see all the VLRs from the region and then maybe see how is it done, rather than going and downloading each PDF, but you can do a quick search. So we're hoping that this can be a really useful knowledge tool for the region. So just for example, with the data, with the few that we've uploaded, we have about 20 up so far. We've highlighted that the region SDGs 6, 11, and 13 are the most prioritized. And I've compared this to the Zimbabwe VLRs. And in all the VLRs that we have had presented here, all of these SDGs also feature one or more. Normally all 3, but in some cases 1 or 2, but they are the predominant SDG. So you can do simple analyses like this And for instance, best practices, Amston was discussing the institutionalization of SDGs. So looking in Zimbabwe, where I focused my examples, I think in every local government, there was an interagency steering committee that was established. And so with a tool like this where you can search, you can see, well, who was part of these steering committees and these working groups? If there was academia there, which academic departments have been invited to be part of these steering committees, which ones have been left behind? Why are they there? Are they there for data collection purposes, or are they there for providing information in a particular sector that you're focusing on? But you can start to investigate. So, for example, some have created working groups out of the clusters, the economic, social, environmental clusters. Others have created SDG task force. So, we hope that we can look at some of these practices and see what's working, what's not. And also the leaving no one behind principle. It's something that came through very, very strongly in the Zimbabwe VLRs around the inclusive strategies, as we just discussed in this session. I think there were a lot more examples I can recall on how innovation has been used, but you can then you can search innovative strategies and find ways to also enhance your processes. We heard about the challenges quite a bit yesterday. I think I have less than a minute even remaining, so I'm not going to dwell on this, but just highlighting that data, so local data disaggregation and financing of the SDGs, so domestic resource mobilization, I think that those were clear challenges and opportunities. And as I mentioned, ECA is thinking about the future capacity building, this post-VLR process. And I want to end thinking about some reflections and questions. So what is the plan after VLRs are conducted? So many, I think there's what now, what's next kind of moment. And someone said yesterday that the VLRs are not an end, but a beginning of an evidence-based journey towards sustainable development. So I'd like to leave with this thought, and to also discuss, I heard some good examples, read good examples in the Zimbabwe VLRs and the other VLRs I've read from the region around these implementation reporting frameworks and doing sector deep dives, I think, at the national level, and maybe that could be something at the local level. So really thinking about how to take these established SDG working groups into the monitoring phase and what kind of capacity will be needed for the local governments to do that. And we're here to assist in that capacity building with the UN family. So I encourage you to think about that. Let's have a discussion when we have time to have some discussion. And also generally areas of capacity building in localization. And just to end, final word for our moderator, we have the Africa Regional Forum for Sustainable Development, the 11th one in April in Kampala, and the theme this year is driving job creation and economic growth through sustainable, inclusive science and evidence-based solutions for the 2030 Agenda and Agenda 2063. So I'm looking forward to seeing many of you or some of you there, and also at the high-level political forum in July. So I hope we can continue the discussion around areas of capacity building, and with that I close.
Muito obrigado pela esta apresentação. De seguida, vou convidar a senhora Ethel Banguaio, por favor, para poder fazer a apresentação. E lembrar que temos só 7 minutos.
7 minutes. 10? Okay, good morning. Thank you. Once again, I'm Ethel Banguayo from UNDP Zimbabwe. I'm an economist there, but also head of prosperity. In the 7 minutes that I have, I'm going to try and go very quickly, but if they stop me at any point, please just remember the cover slide. And I'm glad to see and hear that already this is happening. So everybody who spoke, almost everybody who's spoken so far has said that they're doing some sort of alignment, whether with national development plans, with obviously with the SDGs themselves and your local development plans. So next slide, please. I'm going to skip a number of them. I've already removed some of them, but next one, please. Let me stand like this. Okay, so this one, I mean, obviously the alignment, we want to go from global to regional to national to local. And already we've heard a lot of conversation in that bottom left-hand corner about your local development plans and how you are integrating SDGs at the at the local level. But also just to highlight that within that corner, we also have the CSO strategies. Judith, I'm looking at you. We also have the private sector strategies. So any other sector that is operational on the ground. When you think about your local areas, that's where SDGs happen, and that's where all the stakeholders are actually doing their work. And so as UNDP, I'm from UNDP, like I said, we are working with private sector as well, and I'll talk about them, I'll talk a bit more about that just now, but just to get you thinking about, so you can become so focused on what you are doing, but please do bring stakeholders, not only to discuss with you how you do it within your own local plans, but how they also align their plans with what you are doing at the local level and with the SDGs. And I think the numbers then become, they provide the momentum for you to achieve more. Next slide, please. Next one. Just to remind you in case anybody forgot, next one. All right, so I wanted to speak a little bit more about this, and I've heard a mention of this already. Amson, I think, also mentioned it just now. Just that interconnectedness of the SDGs. And because we have our targets, our goals, our plans, it's easy to just focus on whatever it is that goal or that plan is. But in an environment of constrained fiscus, which we have here in Zimbabwe and many countries on the African continent, it makes sense to really pay attention to the interconnectedness. And I have to give credit where it's due. I've borrowed this from DESA, this graphic, and I use it a lot, even when we speak to private sector, to say that you don't always have the money, the funds to throw at all 17 goals. Even if you are implementing them all, even if you are tracking them all, it's not always possible. So as a starting point, identifying, and glad to hear the authority who said they've already prioritized 4, if you would just focus on those that are catalytic. So some work needs to go into this in terms of assessing, in terms of analyzing which are our catalytic goals and how much do we have to spend on them. And of course, what that means is that you also then need to take a 360 view of what you are doing. And sometimes as well as you are doing work in one goal, you're undoing another goal. Amson again gave the example just now. In Zimbabwe, we have mining. They are big for us as a country in terms of forex, in terms of our GDP. We want to grow them, but environmentally, SDG 13, what does that mean? 15 even, what does that mean? Similarly, unemployment is high in Zimbabwe, but we've got our Education 5.0 now. We're pushing technology, we're pushing innovation. We see a lot of companies in the private sector already starting to digitize, mechanize what they do, but what does that mean for unemployment? So even at the local level, as you're putting your plans together and aligning, it will be important to look at that as well. Just to go back a little bit to 2015, so Zimbabwe at the national level went through this exercise of prioritizing. The fiscus was tight, everybody knew that, and so these are the 11, in fact 10 plus 1, as they call it, because it was originally 10 goals that were prioritized, and then one more was added the following year. The idea being that if we focus on these ones, the other ones will automatically start to happen because of the multiplier effect from these goals. Next slide, please. Our national development strategy. Next slide, please. It's got 14 sort of thematic areas. And so back in 2021, we ran an exercise together with DESA, with the Ministry of Alignment, starting to align the national development strategy with the SDGs. And whenever we do this work with local authorities, with businesses, we use the first 2 columns as a starting point, in terms of, nationally, those 14 thematic areas in the second column are aligned to those SDGs on the left, and then whoever we are speaking to or working with would then, of course, then slot in what they are doing in that last column on the right. And for yourselves, that would be your local development plans. Next slide, please. So as I said, the process actually started in 2017, where we went around the country. Back then, the SDGs were under the remit of the Ministry of Finance, and helping local authorities to align their local development plans with the SDGs. Then there was a change in government, a change in the National Development Plan. We started again, 2021, our current National Development Strategy. That exercise happened. The following year, it was then decided to bring that alignment right down to indicator level. And so because poverty is poverty, whether you're talking about NDS, SDGs, youth unemployment is youth unemployment, wherever, SDGs, wherever you are. And so does it not make sense, that as you are reporting locally for your local development plan, automatically that same report is feeding into your national plan and automatically into the SDGs. So in Mutare, in Murewa, Tswane, I struggle with that, Pretoria, Tswane, Tswane, wherever you are, you can pull out your report and say, listen, this is how we are contributing to the SDGs because it's the same issues. Okay, and then from 2022 as UNDP, that's when we really started working with private sector in terms of helping them to put together their SDG impact frameworks. So it was good to hear about Mercedes and other, the South African compact is quite impressive. And so what we've been doing with them is to help them go through their whole business to look to see, okay, how are you contributing to the SDGs? By virtue of running your business, you are already contributing. You don't need to even know it. You contribute to SDGs anyway. So how do you now start to deliberately do that all the way from the strategy, right down to throughout all the departments, right down to supply chains? How do we tell that SDG story? And in Zimbabwe, last year, actually, the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange made it mandatory for listed companies to produce sustainability reports. But what we are seeing is that a lot of them, in addition to the sustainability report and ESG, are also putting together an SDG report, which has been quite good to see. Next slide, please. And so some good entry points. So as UNDP, and I was glad to hear, I think every country mentioned UNDP, some role that UNDP is playing. So in terms of our mandate and the work that we do, these are some areas that we have found to be very good entry points as we are mainstreaming SDGs into local work, even at the local level. And of course, these are all areas that we ourselves work in, and we've been doing SDGs in all of these spaces. So devolution in Zimbabwe, we have a devolution policy that is quite new, and that will be quite a key entry point when we come to sort of localizing SDGs, working with the local authorities. CSO, we've heard about, they're trusted in the communities, they are there. Private sector, like I've said, profit for good. More and more, this is becoming quite topical, and even investors are looking to see who is doing responsible business. What do your ESG policies and strategies look like? And so for them, for private sector, so we were talking about language, speaking language that they understand. So when we go to the private sector, we don't talk about indivisibility and no, obviously they need to know what the SDGs are, but we talk about profit, we talk about bottom line revenues, we talk about finance, we talk about HR, all the sort of things that make sense to them that they can then sort of understand and respond to. And then of course, youth. So we've worked with with the largest mobile network operator on a Youth for SDGs campaign. And the idea was to get youth involved, first of all, in understanding the SDGs, but also in showcasing what they are doing within the communities as an example for other young people. And this was very, very impactful, just in terms of digging out what's happening within the communities. And of course, these communities are all situated within your local authorities. So they are there, these young people, individuals, just normal members of the public doing a lot around SDGs. If you can find them in terms of, getting that SDG work, the SDG word out there, it's really quite effective. And of course, because Zimbabwe has started on this theme of music, I'm going to follow. I'm quite disappointed, South Africa. You are known for being good with music and dancing. I'm really waiting for your SDG song. But I want to show for 30 seconds, I'm going to show, the first 30 seconds of a video that we did with the young people for the Youth and SDGs campaign. We got 3 local artists who are quite popular with the young people. It was quite impressive. We gave them the SDGs. I think that they only sort of knew a little bit about them. We gave them the SDGs. Amongst the 3 of them, they divided them amongst each other. They then sat down for about 30 minutes each, and they came up with the words, they came up with the song. We had already found another young person to do sort of the backing music, the backing. I hope it plays. I really pray it plays. Please, can you try and play the next? We did that with the Ministry of Youth, and then with Econet Wireless and the Elevate Youth department. I don't know if there's sound, but a bit louder, maximum. Maybe the South Africans can do some voice show, guara guara for us, I don't know. And then that's my last slide, so I'm going to sit down while it's playing. The vision is clear. Sihamba la ma-SDGs, Ntwana. 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 Sihamba la ma-SDGs,
The vision is clear. Sihamba lama SDGs ntwana. Sustainable,
adjust volume when it's playing, it will stop. So we'll have to try another time because I would really like you to see what the young people, they did this themselves. So it was really quite impressive. But thank you very much.
Muito obrigado. Eu penso que teremos uma oportunidade para podermos ver este vídeo, se o tempo ainda nos restar. Eu acredito que vão nos enviar nos nossos sites para podermos perceber o que está lá. De seguida vou convidar o Sr. Noel Israel para poder fazer a apresentação e peço, por favor, 7 minutos, por favor. O tempo já está a nos deixar. Faça favor.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Yes, thank you. While we're still waiting for the technology. Where's that other mic? Yeah. Yes. So while we're still waiting for for my presentation, which is very short, a lot of you have been asking me this morning that which goals are we going to learn today? So we have another energizer. Can we all stand up? Yes, I know we're about to attack goal number 2, which is zero hunger. You are all ready for the lunch, but we are not going to deal with goal number 2. So we're going to do goal number 13 and 14. So 2 goals yesterday and 2 goals today. So we have goal number 13 is go what? Climate action. Goal 14. Life below water. Right? Yes. So let's start with goal number 14. Life below water. Yes. You're supposed to bend. Yes, life below water. Yes, so that's goal number 14. And then goal number 15 is what? Life on land. Life on land. So if you see on the picture, there's a tree and there are birds, right? Yes, so we are going to do a tree and the birds, right? Yes, so this is the tree. One leg up. Yes, and then we fly. Yes, that's goal number 15. Yes, I hope you remember the goals. Okay, so just move to slide number 3. So basically, the key questions that Ethel and Amson spoke about. How do we make sure that this process, the VOR process, is not an end in itself? We need to make sure that this process evolves, is continuous, and that is very critical. So my presentation is just to share some of the key issues or key aspects that we can do, because the key question is what's next after your first VOR. For most local authorities that are here, you have been able to produce your first VOR, but what is the question? What actions are we going to take after? So these are some of the issues that we think and some of the key aspects that we are implementing as a local authority in Zimbabwe, which is City of Umtare. And my name again is Noam Shangwe. So the key action is to institutionalize SDGs. That's very important. We need to make sure that we have institutionalized the VOR process. And how do you do that? Yesterday, I also spoke about sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You already have established structures within your local authorities or your municipalities. And what we have done as a City of Umtare, we already have what we call our integrated results-based management system, or you can call it a monitoring and evaluation team. So within that team, what we have done is to add another portfolio, which is the VOR process. So this ensures that there is sustainability and in terms of the VOR process. So part of that team, it's important to then have a coordinator, appoint a focal person, appoint a coordinator responsible for the VOR. So in this case, we're just utilizing the structure that we have already established. It's also critical to align the local policies, and you use the findings that we have, findings from the VOR process, and you revise your local development plans, budget, and policies to better support SDG achievements. So for the City of Umtare, our local plans are already aligned to the National Development Plan, Agenda 2063, SDGs. So I think this is one aspect that we've been talking about since yesterday, that the work that we already do as local authorities, one way or the other, is already feeding or addressing the sustainable development goals. So you simply need to make sure that whatever work that we are doing at our local level, we are aligning that work to the SDGs, to the Agenda 2063. We also need to align our VOR reporting. We already produce a number of reports as local authorities. And one that is mandated, I know in South Africa, also Zimbabwe, you are supposed to do what is known as an annual report. So there is no need to then have an annual report and then have another report. It's one and the same thing. What you are reporting in the annual report is also what is addressing sustainable development goals. So it's the same information that we also use to produce our VOR reports. So we need to make sure that as we are reporting it, once we integrate the two, what it means is we will be able as local authorities to produce our VORs every year, because you are still going to produce an annual report. If that annual report is linked to sustainable development goals, it then means you are able to produce there and there your VOR report. Next slide. And monitoring and evaluation becomes key. And we already have structures in our local municipalities of monitoring and evaluation. In our case, for example, we do what is known as, we do reviews every quarter, M&D reviews. What we have done over the past 2 years, the M&D reviews are not just for the municipality on its own, but there is staff, internal staff, there are policymakers who are the councillors, there is also the multi-stakeholder group. So everyone is involved in the process of monitoring and evaluating the different programs and activities that the local authority is implementing at any given time. So every quarter, we sit down as a group, we review the progress, our set targets for that particular quarter, and achievements for that particular quarter, the challenges that we experienced. So the same process, we are going to ride on the same process of reviews. So whenever we are reviewing on a quarterly basis our programs and activities, we incorporate aspects of SDGs. So the process becomes one. And then on the public forums and workshop, obviously we need to make sure that we organize events such as education, feedback, co-creation or the VOR. And what we are doing, for example, as a local authority is to utilize again the structures that we have and the programs that we already have. Like we have a multi-stakeholder group that I spoke about yesterday. That group has got a representative from civil society, government, a number of different groups, business, SMEs that we have within the city. So we are going to utilize the same structure to make sure that we talk and publicize, raise awareness on the Sustainable Development Goals, the VOR process. And also, part of our education program for Sustainable Development Goals is we have also in our library, in our city library, we have created a corner where we put information on Sustainable Development Goals. So we call it an SDG corner. So if you enter into our library, there's a corner with all the information on Sustainable Development Goals. So it's part of education. Remember yesterday and part of today, I think one of the key issues that is coming out here is that there is lack of awareness on Sustainable Development Goals. So let's write on the structures. We know a number of municipalities. We also have our schools, municipal schools. Let's utilize those structures to make sure that we cascade information on SDGs. And then, obviously, continuous capacity building is very critical. Next slide. Then we also need to make sure that on issues of data collection and quality, for purposes of ensuring that we produce data that is reliable, data that is of good quality, we need to make sure that we leverage on the existing or technology that is going to come. We have a number of technological developments that are taking place in the world currently, and we need to utilize GIS to make sure that we map our local authorities. We need to utilize chatbot. We need to utilize enterprise resource packages, ERP, softwares. In our case as a city of Voluntary, after we noticed the gaps in our data, we then last year established a department for a section under the office of the town clerk for GIS. We already have people that are manning that department and going through the process of digitizing, mapping the whole city. So it's quite critical that we map our cities. We have also introduced a chatbot, a WhatsApp-based version, chatbot. What we do with that chatbot, there is information, including our VOR. Now we've posted it now on our chatbot. So it's a WhatsApp-based chatbot. So it's just to say hi. If you need any information, even including our audits, we are putting them now on that WhatsApp chatbot. Last year and this year, we used the chatbot again for our budget consultations. So it's a platform. We share the whole budget you can download it on your WhatsApp. If you want to make a contribution, you make a contribution through the same chatbot. So a lot of our citizens, especially in Zimbabwe, I think WhatsApp is over 90%. Most of our citizens, they use WhatsApp. So it's one platform that you can use to share information on SDGs, to share information on all the programs that will be taking place within your local authority. Then we need also to enhance online portals, upgrading our websites, social media, so that we post information related to SDGs and the work that councils are doing. And also, we need to ensure that we collaborate with National Statistics Office, especially for data collection. If you want to make sure that our data is accurate, we need to make sure that we link with our National Statistics Office, research institutions. There are COSOs, again, that are working on the ground to collect information. But how do we make sure that that data is consolidated so that we don't have different reports? And then lastly, we need to make sure that we also organize surveys, feasibility studies. In our case, after our first VOR, we noted a number of gaps. And what we are doing now is to invest. We've put a big budget in our 2025 budget for research and development. We're going to conduct a number of surveys. We're going to conduct a number of feasibility studies that are related to the services that we provide as a local authority. And we think in our next VOR, we will be able to have correct data, correct information, and it's going to be an improvement from the first VOR. Thank you.
Muito obrigado, Sr. Noel, pela esta apresentação muito interessante. De seguida, vou convidar a senhora Adelina Kalima para poder fazer-nos uma apresentação, ouvir abrilhantar-nos com uma apresentação. Colega Adelina, por favor.
Obrigada. Salama? Esqueceram-se? Salama? Ok, muito obrigada. Primeiro dizer que estou muito feliz com as apresentações anteriores, por isso que acabei cortando a minha apresentação para não ser repetitiva. Porque dos vários aspectos que foram falados, nós já trazíamos, ou porque temos essa experiência também em Nampula. Sobre a articulação dos instrumentos que aqui foi falado, não difere muito com aquilo que a gente faz ao nível da nossa província. Primeiro dizer que hoje em Moçambique, Nampula é a primeira província que já tem a sua estratégia provincial de desenvolvimento. E essa estratégia provincial de desenvolvimento respeita a articulação desses instrumentos. Começamos com o aspecto dos instrumentos internacionais, que são os ODS, vamos ver a posterior. Depois também temos a nossa Estratégia Nacional de Desenvolvimento, que também tivemos em conta quando estávamos a fazer a nossa estratégia provincial, e depois como é que ela articula com os outros instrumentos de implementação de nível local. Estamos a dizer que para nós conseguirmos implementar o que está desenhado dentro da nossa estratégia, começamos pela base, onde são desenhados planos econômicos, sociais anuais para garantir que a gente implemente as ações que estão patentes dentro da nossa estratégia, e implementando estas ações, estamos a implementar também a nossa Estratégia Nacional de Desenvolvimento, assim como estamos a implementar também a Agenda 2030. Mas também, para além da nossa Estratégia Nacional de Desenvolvimento, nós também temos a Estratégia de Desenvolvimento de 5 distritos neste processo. Temos um distrito que já fechou e temos 4 distritos que ainda estão em processo de elaboração da Estratégia Distrital de Desenvolvimento, tendo em conta esta integração dos instrumentos orientadores. E no caso de municípios, nós temos 8 municípios e desses municípios já temos o seu programa quinquenal autárquico já terminado, a respeitar também a Estratégia Nacional de Desenvolvimento, assim como os ODS. Como é que nós fizemos isso? Nós fizemos a localização dos ODS dentro da nossa estratégia. A nossa estratégia é composta por 5 pilares. Nós pegamos... Estou muito rápida? Oh, sorry. Tenho mais tempo, né, Sabine? Sou tua conterrânea, vê lá o que fazes. Ok, vou falar mais devagar. Desculpa para os tradutores. Estava a dizer que a nossa estratégia provincial de desenvolvimento tem 5 pilares. Nós pegamos cada um desses pilares para ver como é que esses pilares respondem diretamente aos diferentes objetivos de desenvolvimento sustentável. Então, podemos ver, o nosso primeiro pilar fala da transformação estrutural da economia. Vimos quais são os ODS que estão diretamente alinhados com essa transformação econômica. Fizemos o mesmo para o segundo pilar, que é sobre transformação social e demográfica. Fizemos aqui o devido alinhamento. Fizemos para o terceiro pilar, que fala de infraestruturas e ordenamento territorial, quais são os ODS que respondem a esta situação. Fizemos também para o pilar de governação, quais são os ODS que estão alinhados a este pilar de governação, assim como o último pilar que nós temos, que é ambiente e economia circular, e vimos quais são os ODS que estão alinhados a aspectos de ambiente. Então, de certa forma, a nossa estratégia está organizada para responder à implementação desta agenda. Mas, para além disso, nós também fizemos a identificação dos marcadores de género. Vimos que um dos aspectos que temos tido aqui como grande constrangimento é a questão do enquadramento dos grupos vulneráveis, assim como o grupo de marcadores de género. Nós fizemos também esta identificação dos marcadores de género por cada uma das atividades dentro da nossa estratégia. Como é que nós fizemos isso? Nós trouxemos uma inovação como província. Desculpa, está muito pequenino, mas eu queria mesmo mostrar como é que estão as nossas matrizes dentro dos nossos documentos ao nível da província. E queria pedir para olharmos mais para esta coluna de resultados. Esta. Se vocês conseguem ver, este é um programa. Primeiro temos o programa. Dentro deste programa, nós estamos a dizer quem são os parceiros que vão implementar este programa conosco. Temos aqui a sociedade civil, temos o setor privado e temos o setor público. Então, por cada uma das ações deste programa, nós olhamos aqui qual é o ODS que esta ação responde. Dentro deste ODS, qual é o indicador dentro do nosso quadro nacional de indicadores, e também verificamos qual é a sensibilidade em relação ao gênero. Então, as nossas matrizes de todos os nossos planos provinciais estão organizados desta forma. Então, de certa forma, podemos assumir que, em termos de localização dos ODS, nós, como província, consideramos que demos um passo muito, muito longo e muito bom, em que conseguimos identificar o ODS por cada uma das ações dentro do nosso Plano Provincial de Desenvolvimento, assim também qual é a sensibilidade do gênero dentro deste plano. Era isso que eu queria trazer como experiência da província de Nampula em relação à localização dos ODS e o processo de planificação. E mais uma vez, podemos ver aqui, esta é a nossa estratégia. Dentro desta nossa estratégia, temos as nossas estratégias distritais, assim como as nossas estratégias municipais. E conseguimos garantir que essas estratégias estivessem diretamente alinhadas com aquilo que são os diferentes ODS. Então, eu acho que em relação à localização dos ODS, assim como a identificação de marcadores de gênero, os nossos documentos conseguem responder a essa demanda. Aqui o único desafio que temos, mais uma vez, é em relação à coleta de dados e à monitoria. Mas talvez com esse tipo de matriz pode ser muito fácil conseguirmos agora melhorar aquilo que é a nossa qualidade de dados como província. E Koshukuru Vanchene. Muito obrigada. Mas eu não ouvi o Koshukuru. Koshukuru.
Bom, eu queria pedir uma salva de palmas muito forte para ela, por uma simples razão. Eu dei um tempo de 7 minutos e ela apresentou em 6 minutos e 12 segundos. Uma forte salva de palmas. Para finalizarmos esta sessão 6, vou convidar a colega Nonkita Fanny para fazer a apresentação. Por favor.
Good afternoon. I'm going to save you the PowerPoint because I understand I'm standing between you and SDG number 2. All right. I think when we talk about SDG localization or institutionalization thereof, I think every speaker that has spoken here, the processes are similar. So I will not repeat what my colleagues have already said. So I will just speak on what we are doing as Mogale City, maybe just to dwell, because my point of interest, I think, is more on the Junior Youth Council, which is one of the institutionalization mechanisms that we are using as Mogale City. Mogale City is one of 11 municipalities in Gauteng, and we are about 30 kilometers northwest of Johannesburg. If you've ever heard of the heritage site, World Heritage Site, Cradle of Humankind, it is in Mogale City. So I'm hoping that when you visit South Africa, you will come through and come see your origin. We are called the city of origin. In terms of the process that we followed the similar process. We were facilitated by SALGA. Together with other 9 local authorities, we developed and submitted our VLR last year, which was our first one, which we used. We developed it as a baseline because there was nothing before that. and we will use that as a basis for subsequent reviews. When we also focused on four goals, which was goal 6, goal 7, goal 11, and goal 17, which are quite critical in terms of the local government mandate in South Africa. We looked at other interlinkages, other goals that are interlinking with this, with the four. It's not moving. But the methodology that we followed as part of institutionalization, we reviewed 2 documents, which are our municipality strategic plan and an integrated development plan. And we checked how those 2 documents are aligning with the global and the national policies. A technical committee consisting of 4 departments was formed to spearhead the development of the VLR. Those departments were community and social services, economic development services, operations management, the aspect of it that deals with strategic planning or integrated development planning, and our environmental division. We submitted like other municipalities, but the institutional arrangements that we have in place, we made sure that we are mainstreaming our SDG localization with the municipal policies, ensuring that the strategic objectives and key performance areas of the municipality are linked. We can be able to trace them back to each SDG that they are contributing to, and we linked those to statutory reporting, which is our monitoring and evaluation, so that for when it comes to reporting, it's easier. You know which goal contributes to which SDG. We also, in terms of institutional and cross-sectoral coordination, we established an SDG technical committee with champions from line departments within the municipality. We also have, in terms of political will and leadership as a form of an institutional mechanism, we use the mayoral committee as the SDG champions that advocate for the SDGs that each of their portfolios are responsible for. In terms of advocacy as well, on SDGs, we established a City Junior Youth Council. I will share a little bit about that, but it emulates the whole council as well as the mayoral committee. If we have a portfolio head for economic development, we will have a junior youth portfolio head for that. We have a junior mayor and that. So we get them involved in the programs that each department is implementing. As another mechanism, peer-to-peer learning, we took advantage of the municipalities that SALGA put together, and we were learning as we were developing the VLRs. We were learning from each other on how to improve and better our VLR. We also have, as a city, we have a partnership with City of Fallon in Sweden, which we also use we exchange programs and activities with them. They come to our city, we go to their city, and in the next visit, we would like our junior youth, to have an exchange with the youth from Sweden as well. Another mechanism we use is multi-stakeholder partnerships. With civil society, we have civil society organizations that help us implement different programs, especially on issues of gender-based violence, issues of women, and etc. Academic and research institutions, we have a partnership with the Gauteng City Region Observatory, which is housed at the Wits University. We are exploring a partnership now with them on SDGs, so that some of the research work that they are doing would give quality data into what we are doing. And then private sector engagement or partnerships. We have mining houses and big businesses. We are currently exploring collaborating with them on their ESG reporting. We have engaged a few so that when they report on their ESGs, they can also inform our reporting. On public awareness and engagement, we are subscribing to the ABCD approach to community empowerment, and we have, extended that even to our communities. In terms of just a few activities that our Junior Youth Council is doing, they've developed a program, because we use this program as a platform to empower and ensure community participation for youth in leadership and implementation of the SDGs. It gives young people the opportunity to voice their perspectives on local challenges. And we believe that it fosters active engagement of young people in decision-making processes. So they've developed a program of action. The exchange program is one. They run programs like on recycling, entrepreneurship, issues of green economy, and green economy and entrepreneurship. They've asked us, they came up with the program themselves. They said they want to do hackathons, they want to do, idea incubation programs, they want to be climate ambassadors for our municipality, and they want to do youth or peer education and training to integrate climate literacy and in entrepreneurship skills. Yeah, I think I will leave it at that. And they are also part of our planning committee. We also do festivities around the urban month in October. So they're part of the planning committee to ensure that the voice of the youth is taken care of in our planning activities. I think I will leave it at that. I think the last thing is that as part of institutional reporting, in the year, our financial year starts in July as municipalities. So as we round up this year, as we prepare for new performance contracts for senior managers, we will ensure that as they report, the SDGs are incorporated as part of their performance agreements. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigada, senhora Kita, pela apresentação. Antes de eu devolver a palavra à diretora da sessão, gostaria de pedir uma salva de palmas para todos os colegas que fizeram a apresentação. Uma forte salva de palmas. De seguida, uma salva de palmas para todos nós. Muito obrigado, foi um prazer trabalhar para todos nós. Até breve. Obrigado, boa tarde.
Okay, dear participants, we have now come to lunchtime. So we've just, with the last two sessions, we've kind of moved, the first sessions focused on the experience of each of your countries in terms of the VLR preparation, and we're now moving to the beyond VLRs, or VLRs and what more. So we've been thinking about civil society engagement, and now about how SDG localization includes policy, local policy, and institutional mechanisms, and participatory mechanisms. And we're going to continue after lunch. We're actually going to have a slight reshuffling in the program. So we're going to go right after lunch to sessions 8 and 9, because both of them have virtual participants from other time zones, so we don't want to change those times. So right after lunch, we're going to start focusing on financing. And then we will have those two sessions, and then coffee, and conclude the day with session 7, which focuses on the key transitions. As was the case yesterday, we're going to take 45 minutes for lunch right now. It is waiting for you all. So we'll see you back here at 2:30. Thanks. I can understand some.
You want 311.
That's it.